Welcome. Well, you're at home with Jim and Joy, and you are an important part of our EWTN family. And we're delighted that you have welcomed us into your home, and we would love to hear from you. So send us an email with your question or your comment to jimandjoy@ewtn.com. Well, today we're going to have the second part of our show with William Gallo, who is the administrator and co-actor for the cause of Venerable Anthony Vincent Gallo. You can go to their website, fathergallo.com, and I'm anxious to hear the rest of the story.
Absolutely, Joy. You recently were part of a great gathering of people with the John Paul II Foundation, and they have several things that they do as a foundation, and they do a lot of teaching on Catholicism and medical ethics. They do a lot with pastors, and they do Together in Holiness, which is for life, marriage, and family. So tell us a little bit about your time in the Diocese of Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Well, I was there and was with Bishop Schlert, that's who he is, Bishop Schlert, and he, it was a beautiful gathering of married people. There were some engaged couples there, and trying to figure out, how do we do this together in holiness? And we talked about being married and that your spouse is making you holy and that you are hopefully making your spouse holy. We're all on this beautiful journey, right? Amen. What is the gist of it? To die to ourselves and live for the other and to live for Jesus. My talk was on for the good of the whole. And it was from Colossians, and I really just shared about how we all have to be simple things. This isn't complicated. Kind, and loving, and patient, and generous in marriage, right?
You do all those things.
Well, yeah. And not just with your marriage, but, you know, with your children and your in-laws. And how do we become all those things? Because we're all always changing. We're never the same, and that's the beauty of growing in holiness. Is at the end of the day, we want more of Jesus and less of us. Always more of Jesus. And they had adoration, they had confession. So it was a really beautiful time to take a journey to holiness and to get that other speakers and just to really share and to give you some tips. How to do that and to do it well, and then to go back into your marriage and go back into your families and make a difference and into your community. You really, as a married couple, you really need times of retreat. John Paul II Foundation provides that. Look them up. But a time to get away, to learn, to rest, to go away to a lonely place, to get some new ideas, and God will further sanctify your marriage. By the way, William Gallo, who's coming up next, married 60 years to his beautiful wife, Adele. So more coming up about the Venerable Anthony Vincent Gallo. You're not going to want to miss this precious family member that we're going to learn more about. We'll be right back. Please don't go away. Welcome back. Well, you are at home with Jim and Joy, and today we're going to finish our conversation that we had with William on Wednesday. And today we're going to talk about the beautiful guest that he was. He was telling us about the canonization process and the progress that his uncle was making along that road. So today, William's going to tell us a little bit more about the Venerable Anthony Vincent Gallo.
Great to have you back. Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. We must discuss, I think, who was Venerable Gallo, besides being my uncle. Well, he was a man that was born on January the 11th, 1899. And he was baptized the first day on the same day he was born.
Wow.
In the church across the little square from where they lived. And from his early life, they always saw in him this sense of piety and charity to others. When he received his first communion, though it was a day of of enjoyment with the family, but he was always with the Blessed Mother in front of the house and praying to her. This is the way he was. Well, a tragic thing happened when he was 10 years old, and that his father died. So here's this young man who's a sibling of their 9 children, and he was the 7th of one of them. And because the father died, and there was 9 of them, and there was no means of support, he was forced to go into an orphanage with his brother Mario, a younger brother. And they stayed there for 2 years. But it was in that orphanage that he got the seed of a vocation. And when he returned home at 12 years old, he told his parents, and his mother at least, and his people that were still there, that had not emigrated to the United States or Brazil, and he told them that he wanted to be a priest. So they said fine, and at the age of 13, he entered the seminary in Bergamo. But he had a weakness. His health wasn't up to par, and yet he never told anybody. He wouldn't say anything to anybody. And when he went up to Bergamo, he found that this wet climate and cold weather just didn't help him in any way. So it exacerbated the problem. And, but he stayed, and he used all his hours to study. He never took free time because he wasn't educated that well as compared to his conferees. So he had to study hard. Well, at the time when the Second World War started, the First World War, I'm sorry, he was drafted, and he went to the front in Italy, and then he stayed there for about a year and a half. But during one period, he wanted to receive communion, and he walked for 2.5 hours in the cold and the snow just to receive communion and go back to his unit. After he was discharged from the Army in 1919, he went back to the seminary to get his habit. He had a charisma that he wanted to be a priest of the Sacred Heart, and because he felt that they were always, their mission was to teach and be devoted to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. That was the vocation he would eventually have. And he stayed at the seminary there until he was transferred to other seminaries to study. And then they started to see something wrong, but he would never complain. And all he did was suffer for Christ.
His physical health.
He knew he had a path to Calvary, and he had to follow that path. Nothing was going to disturb it. The only anxiety that he had, though, is if the illness stopped the journey to become a priest, this could possibly stop his journey to Calvary. This is just how he felt. So the holiness and the piety that he had was something that was very unusual. His superiors recognized that he was a very pious and holy individual, but they couldn't understand what was wrong, because he would never say anything. Finally, just about when he was getting his perpetual vows, they sent him to a doctor. And the doctor found that he's complete collapse of his nervous system. And they told him that he can't be cured, but with rest, he can continue on what he was doing. That news didn't disturb him, but what did disturb him was the fact that he knew he could not become a priest. He would be discharged from the order because of his illness. So he kept silent about it.
Because he didn't want that to keep him from being ordained and moved along.
So finally he took his perpetual vows, but he was not ordained with with the other priest that was companions, because they felt that he was getting too sick. So they sent him up to Lourdes to see the mother help the sick. And when he came back, he told the order that he was not cured of anything, but he received a grace of resignation to who he was and what he had, and then to live with it. That was a comfort to him.
That's such an important word. Say that again. He was saying he didn't receive a healing, which most people don't when they go to Lourdes, and God does heal. But he received a grace. And what was that grace again? Because I think that's for the majority of people.
To accept what he had. and to accept it for the love of Christ. No other reason. And you know, we all do these things, but we don't understand when, oh, I'm cured, fine, but now what? But his direction was only for Christ, to climb that hill with him. And he felt that this is the only thing that he wanted to do. What motivated, God knows. It's God's grace. Well, finally, when they sent him home because they felt, well, he was getting too sick. And he went home for a couple of years, and then the order required him to dispense of his vows. And this was a tragic thing because he felt that this was something that was going to detract from his ability to become a priest and do the job. So they forced him, and he went home, and his mother encouraged him, but the superior of the Order of the Priest of Sacred Heart asked the Bishop of Avellino to please ordain him, because you have a very holy man there who's suffering terribly, but please ordain him. And the bishop said yes, and went from the Avellino to the diocese seat, and went to his hometown in Monteforte Irpino to canonize him, to ordain him in his own church, where he was baptized and where he received his first communion. Well, after that was done, he asked his bishop and the superior of the order, could he go back and be an oblate with the priest, to work with those priests? And they said yes.
So that oblate means to work with that organization, to be associated, but he's not really functioning as a priest with.
That's right.
The
You're not
Sacred
a member
Heart
of the
priest.
order.
Okay.
You're just there as
Yeah.
basically a volunteer. That's what you're doing. But he had this feeling that he had to join that type of situation where he would help the sick and help the poor, and also to do what was necessary. Well, finally, when he got his faculty for confession, this is the thing that really brought in his life, because now people from all over Rome came to him, no matter what level of economic level or stature that they were, because he had an ability to scrutinize the human heart. And he was able to inflame those that were lukewarm and convert the hardened sinner. He understood it. He understood what pain was, he understood what sin was, and he understood that he had to do these things. Well, he would be in the confessional all day long and all night. And if he wasn't in the confessional, he was out with the poor and the dying and helping them. And he was dying right in front of their eyes, but nobody really understood it. But his objective again was, I will only do it to suffer for Christ and nothing else. He said, this is my life. This is what I have to do. Well, finally, in the end of April of 1934, he collapsed just before saying Mass, and they brought him to the hospital, and he died in the arms of Christ on May 2nd, 1934. He was 35 years old. He's a man that you would say, when you read his life, he was so simplistic in everything that he did, but he had the courage of something that was almost inhuman, because he just devoted what he had, and he suffered only for Christ. And he felt that that's the motivation, and that's the example that I must give to everybody around me, whether it be family, friends, or strangers. That's the thing that he had to portray to people, and he did it. He had such a love for his mother. When they exhumed his mother's body, after 10 years, in Italy, they put you in a wall. They found her totally incorrupt. Did the church give that any significance? No. But it certainly led to a situation where something was unusual, that she gave birth to a son who had qualities that were befitting for a saint. And that's his life. And now we're waiting for that first miracle to happen. There have been many divine interventions happening, some of them recently that are very interesting
Excuse me, so
to
he
hear.
went from servant to blessed, and you're saying now in order to be beatified, there needs to be
He
at
needs
least
that
one-
first miracle. And then for canonization, you need a second. Well, you know, if you talk about what a miracle is something that is inexplicable. It's beyond medical means. It's lasting. It has to be lasting, and it has to be complete. And this is the thing that's a situation. And also, God has to permit it. So when they investigate a miracle, they also find out whether you prayed only to that individual and not to anybody else.
And when he died, how many people showed up? So you could see,
People showed
right?
up. Thousands of people showed up, and they all were proclaiming that a saint has just died, and we want to see a saint. And in the 1940s, my Uncle Mario, who was his brother, became a Redemptorist brother, was the first petitioner of the cause, and led the cause to venerability when he died in 1986. But John Paul signed a proclamation for venerability. And another thing is you know, when you talk, well, what is a martyr? And I think I alluded to it before, but there is an exception that Pope John Paul did, and that was for Saint Maximilian Kolbe, because he didn't fit the definition of being killed by somebody. It was a political unrest in the country. So John Paul said, yes, he's a martyr of charity. And Uncle Vincent is considered a martyr of suffering. His life was devoted to suffer for Christ, to get to the cross of Calvary. That was his life.
We just have a couple of minutes remaining. What is your hope for this time and our people who are here viewing and hearing? How can we assist in this process of canonization in any way?
One thing that's most important in everybody's life should be prayer. The power of prayer is something that if we understand it, we are asking the divine to help us. And people don't understand that you can do this. Christ asked people, pray. I am it. I am who am. I'm this person that when you go into eternity is the present tense, never the past, never the future. You pray to him. He created us. And you pray to his saints to help to mediate. This is the most important thing, is prayer. We forget because we think we have to have formal prayer. You could have prayer with an argument with God. He'll listen to it, because when Christ hung on that cross, he said, Father, why am I here? Why are you forsaking me? So that's a human expression, because he had two natures, divine and the natural nature. So he could have that emotion without sin. And we can do this very same thing. Prayer. That should be our life in everything that we do. It's not a difficult thing to do.
Well, the prayer on the back of this beautiful card of Venerable Anthony Vincent Gallo says, O most Holy Trinity, who deigned to raise Venerable Anthony Vincent Gallo to the priesthood and endowed him with precious gifts, especially that of a burning love for suffering and immolation, we humbly beseech you, if it be your will, that he may be glorified on earth, and that we may obtain through his intercession the particular grace which we ask for with living faith. Amen. Bill, thank you so much. I'm sure your uncle is very, very proud of you. Thank you for introducing us to him. And he's a family member of ours, and you've helped us to know him. And we look forward to going to your website and learning much more for this process as it moves along. It's www.fathergallo.com, fathergallo.com. Get to know this precious family member. We'll be right back. Plenty more to come. Please don't go away.
Welcome back. Well, Father Joseph will be joining us once again today. But first, we're going to go check in with Joan. Joan, you have a couple of your own favorite saints. What are they?
Well, greetings from Rome to all of you at home, and today's a little bit of a departure from my usual format of reporting for Rome. I have a wonderful story to tell you about hopefully a future saint in which I am personally involved, a cause that I'm involved in. I think all of my listeners and viewers and readers know of my great passion for Hawaii's two saints. Father Damien and Mother Marianne of Molokai. I've been to Hawaii 8 times. I've been to Kalopapa, the peninsula on the island of Molokai, at least 5 times. And it was here in 1865 that King Kamehameha V and the Hawaiian legislature passed the act to prevent the spread of leprosy. Now, this law basically quarantined those with leprosy, and the most serious cases were exiled to Kalopapa. Now, Father Damien de Voister was a priest of the Congregation of the Sacred Hearts of Jesus and Mary, and he came here as a missionary priest from 1873 to his death in 1889. Now, just a few years earlier, 1883, Mother Marianne Cope came to Kalopapa with 6 of her Sisters of St. Francis to minister to the victims of leprosy. She stayed here until her death in 1918. And so now there's a 3rd person being considered for canonization. It's a lay person, Joseph Dutton. And he was a native of Vermont. He was a Civil War veteran. He came to Kalopapa at the age of 44 and spent the remaining 44 years of his life helping Father Damien, Mother Marianne, and then by himself taking care of the lepers on Molokai. Now, a diocesan guild has been found to study and promote the cause of Joseph Dutton, and I've been honored, I've been asked to be a part of that guild. I wish I could tell you what we've done so far, but maybe at a future date I can tell you how this process is proceeding. But time's up here, as usual. Back to you at home.
Joan, thank you so much. We should all have favorite saints, and Joan has shared hers. Father, it's always good to see your face.
You know, recently I was back at my old seminary, St. Charles Borromeo in Philadelphia. We were celebrating our 25th anniversary of the priesthood this coming year. And we elected Father Ephraim Esmilla to give the homily. And I liked what he did. He talked about the joyful, sorrowful, and glorious mysteries of the priesthood.
Wow.
And I was thinking, because I know a lot of my classmates, they have huge parishes. One has 1,500 families, and he's there by himself. There's a lot that they carry, the weight that they carry. And the saint we're discussing, Venerable Gallo, I think gives you courage. When you see a man who just had this kind of zeal, he was suffering, but he saw that in that suffering was part of sharing in the sorrowful mysteries of Christ. And now, of course, he shares in his glory, please God.
Father, first, thank you for 25 years.
Yes.
You and your class given to the church and love for the bride of Christ. So I didn't want that to go unnoticed. Hope we're going to get to hear more about 25 years of ministry, but that would take more than a couple of minutes, I would think. So it's powerful, relatable. Yeah, I think Venerable Gallo is a relatable priest. I like what was said by William, that he went to Lourdes and he came back and reported. He knew if he wasn't healed, really, he wasn't going to go into the priesthood. And he just told him flat out, I don't think I'm healed. But I've been given a grace, you know, to be able to do what God's called me to do. And I want to do that. And that's reality. You know, we've got to come to the reality. Go, what do you want from me? However long my life is, however healthy or unhealthy, I just want to ascend the hill of the cross and know the glory of God.
You know, there's a great quote of Saint Bernard of Clairvaux, and he talks about how God gives us everything and we could never return the love in that capacity. But he says nothing is lacking where all is given. And that's where we see he only lived to be 35, Venerable Gallo, and yet all was given. Nothing was lacking. And that was his whole desire, just to give himself totally to the one who had given himself totally to him.
Nothing is lacking when all is given.
Yeah.
That's great. Father, lead us in a prayer and a blessing, please.
Father, we thank you for the example of so many saints, this luminous trail of the saints throughout history, men and women who lived remarkable lives through your grace and through the example that they found courage of your Son's suffering and his glory. Help us, too, to be those living saints today. And may Almighty God bless you, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Father.
Now be sure to join us on Monday when we'll visit with Rebecca Kiesling, who has just an incredible, amazing story of her own conception and birth through sexual assault. and her story, just so incredibly powerful, her identity, true identity in Christ. Keep it on EWTN. You're an important part of this family. You're always at home with Jim and Joy. Bye now.